Hi, this is just going to be a quick video. Today I'm working on a customer's 2057-2058 and it's almost done. And when I went to put it back together this morning and I got it all pretty much buttoned up and I was going to put it back in the faceplate, I realized that there was something different about this one that I haven't seen on other models like this one. Part of putting it back in the faceplate is putting in this cardboard shield that sort of covers up the back of the speaker cone like this to sort of close it off from the rest of the circuit board. And normally on these there's a little adjustment pot on there where you set the intercom volume, and it was missing on this one, and it's not something I really noticed when I took it all apart, and that was kind of interesting. So I decided I would look around and see why that was the case. So I actually have one here. This is another one, and here you can see the volume pot. And normally this sits in here like this and the pot's right here. I was curious as to why it was missing out of this one because there isn't even any holes in the cardboard where it would pop through. This is done very simply where the little tabs of the pot are poked through the cardboard and then they have two wires soldered onto it, and it's all missing on this one. Now this is a very early model. This is from July of 1961, so it's right near the beginning when this model first was introduced. I decided I would take a look into finding out why it wasn't on there. One of the advantages of being an authorized NuTone service center is that we have these. These are service bulletins, and when I signed up to be a service center, initially they sent me 3 giant boxes. They were like 24 by 24 by 24 boxes, and in the boxes were all kinds of service related kits and parts and things you needed to work on intercoms when you were a service center. And there was also part sheet binders and manual binders and all the documentations pretty much for every intercom that NuTone had ever made up until that point. And one of the things that is in one of the binders are copies of all of the original service bulletins that they used to send out when there were problems with any particular model and had some problem that people reported, and the engineering department would look into it and see if it was a real thing or not and find a solution if it was and let us all know. And what you have to remember is this is back in the old days. It's before fax machines. There was no faxing. There was letters in the mail, and you would get, when I started doing this in the early 80s, you would get these big white envelopes with green stripes on it from NuTone, and inside of it would be service bulletins. Usually you'd get one about once a month or so, or every 6 weeks, and there would be updates on problems and things that they encountered and things they wanted to know in case you had problems, and all those other kind of changes of how service center things were going and all that kind of stuff. So in my files I have some service bulletins for 2057, 2058s, and I found this one here, which is a modification to increase intercom gain over radio, and it's service bulletin number 24, so it's really early on. NuTone started to have technical service bulletins almost immediately in 1957 when the 2011-2012 was introduced, and that's also around the time when actual service centers became a more formal thing and there was a whole service center program. So it started really early on when they started to build electronic equipment. And this is dated September 22nd, 1961. So it's just a little bit after the time this unit was made. And what this talks about here is, it says, in line with our previous radio intercom models, the new 2057-2058, so it was new, incorporated an automatic intercom gain that permits the intercom to be heard over the radio. The increased sensitivity of these new models may result in a low volume setting for the system for normal listening, thereby restricting the override feature. And what they mean is when you use the intercom, it overrides the radio and is supposed to be louder. It doesn't mute the radio, it just, you're speaking over the radio. And it should be louder so you can be heard over it. The modification outlined in the attached sheet, which can be readily made in the field, will overcome this condition. The use of an adjustable control, that's this, adjustable control, has been selected rather than a change in the value of a fixed resistor R19 due to variations in the installation, the number of remote speakers, location, etc. So what that says is R19 is a fixed resistor that's on the circuit board on the back of the unit, and that fixes the intercom volume for the entire system, which apparently, once you released it out into the real world, was a problem. People didn't like it. It didn't work in everybody's situation, and so there was a field fix, and that's where the term field fix came from. Follow step number 6 in the instructions for the proper method of adjusting the control. This modification will also be incorporated in our regular production beginning the 1st of October 1961. So shortly after this unit was made. The intercom level control will be preset at the factory at a specific level, and that will ensure proper operation in the majority of installations, but the adjustment to a higher level can be made if necessary. And this came from Bob Carringer, Service Station Director. And if we flip it over here to the next page, we have detailed out modification to increase intercom gain. We have steps 1 through 6. And it shows here in the drawing that some engineer drew out for all of us service center guys so we'd be able to locate the parts and understand what it is they wanted us to do. It shows how to, you clip out, you change a resistor here from one value to another. You install the potentiometer on the cardboard shield, and you clip out a resistor and attach wires from the pot to the holes or the original component was located. It's a fairly simple thing to do. On this model in particular, it shouldn't be too bad because you can access this part of the board by removing the dial face and the black plate behind it. And they actually also gave us schematic sheet, but what we're looking for is R19. And R19 should be changed from a fixed resistor to a variable resistor. And here we have on the sheet, we have R19, and it actually is still shown, so they didn't update the schematic, at least not at this point. Perhaps they sent this out in case service centers lost theirs or didn't have one. And here it shows that it's a 2.7 ohm resistor, which is what it says in the sheet. That's where our variable resistor will replace the fixed one. So it's kind of a benefit to have technical information like this, and if you understand how NuTone designs things, and if you understand the way they choose components and how they make up their service manuals and their technical field notes, you can often find information in one set of manuals that applies to other sets that their manuals don't have that information. So you have to sort of cross-reference things to figure out what it is you're looking for. It's especially useful sometimes. Back in these days, almost all electronic components in a set like transistors and things like that, they had dedicated NuTone part numbers. They didn't necessarily always publish the manufacturers, like if it was a TI transistor or a Fairchild transistor, you didn't always get the actual transistor number, you just got a NuTone part number for it. But if you search through the manuals, sometimes you can find out what it is, and that gives you a clue as to what you're looking for on a different model, and that can be a big help. One of the other things I found this morning when I was looking through this folder, which I haven't looked at in a long time, here's an actual letter, or it's an inter-office memorandum. This is the real deal. It's not a copy. This is the real thing. This is dated September 18th, 1962, which happens to be actually the date. September 18th is the date that my service center certificate is dated from, and it was signed by the National Service Manager at that time. And however, this is 1962. This is to Jack Moore, and Jack Moore, when I first started, when I was signed up, Jack Moore was the regional sales manager for the 9 western United States, and Jack worked for NuTone all the way up through, it was probably around 1994, 95, something like that, and then he retired to Florida to play golf. And it was written by Frank Wallace. I'm not sure who Frank was exactly, but it says, the subject is your memo to Jim Klein of 9/11/1962, low FM volume. Upon receipt of Mrs. Tom Black's Model 2058 intercom, credit was issued to the House Hanson Hardware Company. I don't know who that is. The problem of low volume was in result of a cracked printed circuit board located down at the V2 socket. V2 is valve 2 or tube 2. This is at the lower left-hand corner looking at the set from the rear. This break was interrupting the FM antenna connection. It comes over from the termination of the right hand side and is set into the input circuit of the RF amplifier. This is a very difficult corner to get into to resolder, but repairs can be accomplished in the field. This broken connection will give you very intermittent operation as for low and high volume for FM. I hope this information has been of assistance to you. I remain, regards, Frank. So obviously Frank and Jack knew each other, and even in those days I'm pretty sure it's not any different than it was 30 years later. NuTone didn't like giving out credits for damaged or defective goods. They would have rather had a service center repair it, but in this case I'm guessing that either Mrs. Tom Black or Jim Klein probably created quite a fuss and wanted a new set because they had paid a lot of money for it. So just a little bit of service center history. Anyway, I'm going to do the modification on this unit so the customer has a proper adjustment over their intercom volume, and then it's going back in its faceplate, and it'll be all done. So I think I'll be back when I get it all put back together and let you see what it looks like. I'm back. Our 2057-2058 from 1961 has been modified in accordance to the NuTone Technical Bulletin. I replaced the one fixed resistor on the back. I removed the other fixed resistor and added the little volume control assembly that I showed you. And now, when we operate the intercom, we have some control over the intercom volume that projects over the radio if the radio is on. Right now I have it on phono, so the radio is shut off, but the system is still on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the intercom volume all the way down, so it would be virtually zero. And if we use our talk and listen button, I have it hooked up to a single speaker right here. And we don't have anything. If I turn it up some, now we start to get some feed through. And if we turn it up more, we start to get a little feedback. Move that over there a little bit. Turn it up more. That's maximum. And so now we have adjustable intercom volume, which is what NuTone intended with their technical service bulletin. It also works in the other direction. Lots of feedback there, but if we turn it down, see, it's adjustable, which is much better. This came up actually when I was doing the original testing after I had reassembled it and repaired this unit. The intercom volume was really low. I can see why it was a problem back in 1961, because it was probably only maybe 10 or 15% louder than the music, and it really wouldn't have worked very well in most people's houses, because what you have to remember is if you turn the radio back on and you set it to a comfortable level, if the intercom is very low, see, when you use the intercom control, if you push it down to talk, it doesn't mute the radio in the other stations. It does mute it here at the station that you're calling from, but not in the other rooms. So you're speaking over the radio. So if the intercom's not very loud, you're not going to be able to hear it. But if you turn it up, oops, wrong way. It comes out much louder on the remote stations. So that's it. It's another successful 2057-2058 repair. This was a non-working unit when it came in, and we did our usual thing. Like I showed in another previous video I did on a 2055-2056, how we are now replacing all. Those are the light bulbs. We're replacing all of the old carbon composition resistors in these models, because what we found is these have become very electrically noisy and should be replaced. The problem with these is the epoxy encapsulant that the carbon is covered by, they tend to get porous over the years with all the heat and cool cycles, and then moisture gets in to the inside into the carbon, and it affects the resistance, and the little carbon pellet that makes up the resistor starts to break down, and they become electrically noisy, and then you don't have a system that is very quiet when it's all done. If you listen to this one very carefully, even if we turn it up quite a bit, there's no static, there's no crackly noise, and there's no hum on the system. It's very, very quiet. So that makes a big difference. We did replace our 2 line voltage input capacitors with modern safety capacitors like I showed in the multi-part video. We replaced the 2 dial lamps because that's always important. And this one, surprisingly enough, all of the tubes in this model tested good with the exception of this one. And you can see right here that actually the envelope was broken when it came to us, and I don't think that was shipping damage because it had a metal shield around it. I think that's what failed initially in the set altogether. There's a big chunk missing out of it. So there's the inside of the vacuum tube. This is a 6BN4, I think. No, it's a 6BL8. Anyway, so that was the only tube that had to be replaced. It has all original tubes in it except for the one that I replaced. So that's another successful 2057, 2058 repair. This model has become very popular for repairs over the last 2 years or so. I think it has enough cool retroness to it that when people move into a house and they have one, they want to get it fixed so it works throughout the house. It's got sort of that mid-century modern thing going on, I guess. Anyway, I hope you found this interesting and perhaps helpful. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up on YouTube because that always helps. There'll be a banner right here that shows you how to subscribe. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell or on the wheel, put in your email address, and every time we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.
My hair, change ourselves and we do it all the time. Why do we do that? Why do I do that? Why do I do that?